Hey, welcome back to Friends in Austin. Today I have Phyllis Snodgrass on the podcast, and she is the CEO at Austin Habitat for Humanity. Thank you for coming on, Phyllis. I'm super excited to have you.
I'm super excited to be here.
So can you tell me, I think I, like many people, we've all probably heard of Habitat for Humanity, but I don't, and we were talking a little bit before the podcast, I don't know if product is the right word when it comes to a nonprofit, but the main pain point that you guys solve, I don't know exactly how it's implemented. I don't know who the best people are to receive that benefit. And also I know that it's a national, if not international. It's an international organization. So I'm interested to hear how that works internationally, nationally, then on down to the local level. What do they do to manage these local, what do you call them, branches? Would you call them a branch? Affiliates. Okay. So can you dive in? I know that's a lot at once, but if you could dive into that a little bit.
It is, and I find it fascinating. I hope others will. So Habitat International, or Habitat for Humanity, period, really started out of the social justice movement, pre-civil rights era. Clarence Jordan was a preacher in southern Georgia, near Americus, Georgia, and he started a farm called Koinonia Farms. And it was people living together interracially and supporting each other, building homes for each other, and burning the mortgage up after it was paid off. It was just a really neat concept and very biblically founded. It was very much based on loving your neighbor as yourself and just living out those principles. And Clarence was not well received in southern Georgia. As we entered the civil rights movement, I mean, it was so bad. Koinonia Farms was treated so bad that Martin Luther King Jr. wouldn't even go there. I mean, it was just too dangerous.
Wow.
I mean, crosses were burned, stores were burned down. They weren't allowed to belong to the church in their local community, were excommunicated, were not allowed to shop at the local grocery stores. They had a nut farm where they raised nuts. One of my favorite lines was they couldn't figure out how they were going to make a living, and somebody decided to ship the nuts across the country. So they were like, let's ship the nuts out of Georgia. So that was kind of really the founding of Habitat. Not too much later, Millard Fuller, who was actually we call Clarence the spiritual founder of Habitat. Millard came to visit Clarence when he was pretty down and out. He was a young man that was going to make $1 million by the time he was 30, and he did it, and was very successful on Wall Street, but very unhappy. His marriage was falling apart. He wasn't doing well, and he heard about Clarence, came to visit him over a long weekend, ended up becoming good friends with him, and over time gave up everything he had, sold everything he had, and started Habitat for Humanity. So he moved into the farms for a while and helped Clarence with that project, and they came up with this idea of Fund for Humanity, where people would pay back the mortgage into this fund, which would then be loaned to future people to build their home and to have a affordable mortgage and an affordable home that they could call their own. And Habitat was founded on the principle that everyone in the world deserves a safe, decent, affordable place to live.
Wow, I didn't know it was that old. No idea. That's very cool that it originated from that era.
It's super cool to me in this age, in this day and time, when there's so much unrest, to know that you work for an organization that at its very heart has been challenging the way things are done, and really stepping into everybody should help in supporting each other and bringing each other up. And so that whole concept of it takes a community working together, just a beautiful part of Habitat for Humanity and how it works so well. And so Habitat evolved over time into something that it really started with some work done internationally. Millard went from Koinonia to Africa, did some work there, came back. We had a lot of push from local churches wanting to do things in America, and so affiliates started popping up. The first affiliate in the country was in San Antonio, Texas, so right down the street. We came along 35 years later, and
The Austin
affiliate. So we're 35 years old this year, and just have done some amazing work in the community. But it's really special to be part of something that's so big.
Mm-hmm. What I think is interesting about the story that you just told about this man who was very much, sounds like, money motivated at first, and then he became very successful, and then he found that he was missing something in his life. And I think that's one thing that nonprofits in general, when I research them or look into them or talk to people that have volunteered at one, is they get this amazing sense of community, and it brings like this, it relieves this depression and stuff from their life. And I think that's probably a peek into a lot of the problems that I think people are experiencing in our current time is very much social media and how do I look compared to this other person? And one thing that we're constantly or continuously maybe losing is this community feeling of we all live together, we help each other build something more bigger than our individual selves.
That's right.
And as great as the internet is, I feel like the more you get into technology, the farther you get away from that. So I think something very interesting about Habitat in general, and what's really funny about the way it started is a guy that kind of got what he wanted and realized that it didn't make him happy.
Something missing.
Yeah,
that's right.
Very cool. So when it comes to the main way that they provide value to people in need, is it the building of the home? Do they have multiple things they do, or is they really solely focused on this one thing of building homes for people?
Affordable homeownership is a core tenet of Habitat for Humanity. There's a lot of programs that work with rental housing, but it's always been about the transformational properties of home ownership, and so building the homes and selling the homes. But Habitat does more than that. So in some countries, having a safe, decent place to live may involve having water so you don't spend your whole day trekking back and forth, carrying water from a distant source. So internationally, you'll see Habitat's working on water in villages and other projects, in addition to some really great safe, decent, affordable homeownership product. I have had the opportunity to go on an international build to Vietnam a couple of years ago, and it was just a beautiful experience. Over 240 people from around the world, different countries, all coming together to build 26 homes, I think it was, together the same week. It was an amazing experience. But locally, Habitat affiliates do things like we build homes. We do innovative work in the affordable housing space. Habitat has started to use its brand, I think, very effectively in advocacy, because if you can create better policies that allow more housing to get built, it takes some of the pressure off the need for affordable housing.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
And so that's been huge for us. And then we do other work like critical home repair, helping people stay in their homes, getting them more fit for senior living, disabled, veterans, elderly. And then we do a lot of housing counseling. We're a HUD certified financial housing counselor. So a lot of different business lines under one roof, trying to help people have a safe, decent place to live.
Okay. So when you mention policies, are we talking policies like Affordable Housing Act or something like that? And I don't know much. I've heard the term, and I've heard it in Austin. That's an Austin thing, right?
It's across the country.
Oh, it's across the country.
It definitely is. But we do have a critical housing shortage in Austin, and especially affordable housing shortage. The average home sale right now is over $400,000, and that is not affordable to someone who makes 100% of median family income. So if you make the median income, you can't afford the median home price in town. And so there's just a whole lot of people in Austin, from working poor all the way up into families that would normally qualify and be able to purchase housing in a lot of communities that struggle to find something they can afford in Austin.
What kind of policies and solutions are you seeing being discussed we've talked about this problem on the podcast before about the skyrocketing price of real estate, and we're like, well, what is it? Is it because, people want to live here, some salaries are increasing because of tech in this city, all these things. it's all things that are like, no one's doing anything on purpose. It's just kind
Right.
of, this is happening. So, I mean, we've sat there and we're like, I don't really know what you do about that. So
Yeah. It's a tough dilemma because there are so many things that influence it. And you can get 10 experts in affordable housing, and they're going to give you 10 reasons why we have this problem today. But some of the fundamentals are land prices are increasing, and real estate prices are increasing faster than incomes are increasing, especially faster than incomes of working class folks. We have you hear that term a lot. We have a very bifurcated economy. We have some people who's just keep doing better and better and better, and then others who just, are barely getting by, but the costs are rising a lot faster than their incomes are rising. So there's more and more strain on more and more households. It causes them to move further out. But then you take that a step further. In Austin, love this community, but we have some pretty restrictive housing policies, and it's great when you want, homes that are safe and decent. You want them to be environmentally friendly. You want to have streets that are of a certain width. But every single decision you make, no matter how good it is, has a cost. And you start just layering all these costs onto the base price of a house, and you can go down the street or to another community where the pipes don't have to be as big in the street. The street doesn't have to be as wide. You don't have to protect as many trees. You can just come up with a million things that we've added on, and every one of those has a cost.
Mm-hmm.
And so while a lot of people may be able to afford to absorb that into the cost of their homes, those at the bottom levels, it begins to cut them out. In addition, you've got a super successful economy. You've got lots of people moving here, and you've got very restrictive housing policies that are really preventing more housing from getting built, especially inner city. And so you artificially restrict the price or the quantity of housing, make it hard for people to build. So they have to build further and further out. People that want to live closer to work, want to live closer to the city core, start buying out the less expensive housing, to even tearing it down and building something else there. And it just increases gentrification. And so the underlying that we're doing well is an economy. That's a great thing. But the pressure on housing forces more and more of the housing at the lowest levels to disappear. And when it disappears forever.
Yeah, it doesn't come
Once
back.
that house that was originally sold to someone for $100,000 sells into the marketplace at $400,000, it never becomes affordable again.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where Habitat for Humanity is bringing solution sets to the table. But it's a complicated problem.
Sounds like it is. Sounds like some of it is, as you mentioned, so the city maybe set out with good intentions to put in policies, but then as you stack all these different, restrictions or whatever on top, then that's going to increase the complication in the building process, and it's going to increase the price.
That's right.
And then also the increase in property taxes.
That's right.
So now I think that's a good just segue into exactly how Habitat operates. I know that they build houses, but what's the process? Well, for one, how do they get funded? I mean, obviously people donate the money, but there's probably an entire team, I assume, that is around funding, and their jobs are to find funding and all that stuff. So what are the main sources of funds for Austin or for Habitat for Humanity in general? And
so at a local level, I won't get into Habitat International and their fundraising, because it's a wholly different level because they're trying to do things around the world. But at a local level, back when Habitats first started, and they all started as all volunteer affiliates back then, you would get a lot of times churches, but a lot of great people would get together, fundraise, raise the amount of money they needed to buy the materials to build the house. They would build it with volunteers, and then they would sell it to the family with an affordable mortgage. That went on for a number of years, and then affiliates. The demand was there. There were so many more people that wanted housing than could be served with just people doing this on a volunteer basis. So affiliates began to, form, hire staff, and start managing the construction process. And then over time too, construction rules became more complicated. Mortgage laws became more complicated. And so, trying to hold mortgages, we have about a $14 million loan portfolio of mortgages we've made. But if we're going to be a mortgage lender and a builder and, a housing counselor and all these other roles that we fill, those are all very regulated, complicated industries these days. And so it's very difficult for an all-volunteer affiliate to do that. But traditionally they would fundraise. That's how it would happen. Today, for our volunteer-built homes, we still have to fundraise and try to bring together the amount of money basically to cover the cost of materials. For the house, doesn't quite, but it gets close. Now, there's also a cost to managing volunteers. So you've got to have construction staff that know what they're doing and know all the rules and regulations and laws, because they're the ones that are going to make sure the house passes inspection. And then plus they have to train people in the skill sets and manage those groups every day. So we've got a team that not only knows how to build a house and build it really well, but also knows how to manage people and teach them how to do it. We've also got a team that can manage subcontractors, because some of the houses are going to be built with subcontractors. You've got fundraising. We will bring companies in that want to sponsor, or companies, businesses, individuals, groups, churches that want to sponsor a whole house or a portion of a house, or come on for a day and bring a team. It's a great team building exercise with the goal of trying to raise around $100,000 per house to basically cover the materials. Now, we've gone past the days where you could fundraise and buy the land and the materials with the amount that we fundraise for. So there's also just gifts that come into us generally. But in addition to that, something I think Habitats have done well is we've started a restores. So it's a home improvement, discount home improvement and thrift store that Habitat for Humanity's run. The first one in the country was started here in Austin, Texas.
Oh, really? My dad actually specifically mentioned when he heard you were coming on, he's like, ask about the restores. Apparently he loves the restores.
So that is so awesome. I appreciate that. You don't know, that just warms my heart. I love the restore too. And funny enough, I had a dream for years that someday one of my bucket list items, and don't ask me why, but I wanted to run a bookshop and a thrift store. And so, restore's pretty darn close.
Cool.
But our restore, we have now got a second one in San Marcos, and we're looking at a third location in North Austin. Our restore has for years provided us unrestricted income that can help us with the bottom line. Basically, these days, it covers our overhead. So when people donate to Habitat, every dollar that they're giving us is going directly towards building homes, because we've got the restore operations to help us bring in additional cash. Our restore here in Austin for the last 2 years was the top grossing store in the country. So we're very proud of that.
And for those that aren't familiar with them, what exactly can you find in a restore, and how do they?
Restores are loads of fun. If you've never shopped at one, please do. And if you haven't donated, we welcome your donations, and we will come pick them up. We have home improvement items. So everything from furniture to flooring to fixtures to doors and windows, bathrooms, paint, pretty much anything you would want to fix up a home. But we take more than that. Basically we take anything people donate. So we have housewares. We've even got a little clothing section. And because of the fact that we do take everything, we've been able to open an online store. So we have shopaustinrestore.com, great platform. We just push it out with BigCommerce, great partner of ours, push those online sales sites out into the community, and we're able to generate income online as well. So it's just been a wonderful journey as we grow restores and try to grow the impact. Because the more money we have from restores, the more we're going to be able to put aside to purchase land, which is very difficult to do in an expensive economy. And that gets us the pipeline we desperately need to be able to build more homes.
Wow. So there's a lot going on here. It seems it's almost like 5 companies within one company.
It really is. We joke about that a lot, but we have numerous companies within one company, which is actually a dream come true for somebody who's looking for new challenges in life. Because when I saw the opportunity to come to Habitat, I was just realized how much I was going to get to learn and grow in managing such a diverse organization.
That's great. So these resources, it sounds like the resources have been a very big success.
Extremely.
And a very big part now, it sounds like, of the money that you have in your pool to be able to provide this more affordable housing, correct?
Absolutely. So resource, and they will continue to be, because as we open up more stores, it's going to provide that larger revenue stream.
And the first one was in Austin?
The first one in the country was in Austin,
How
Texas.
many are there now? Do you know?
Over 1,000.
Okay, so there's
across
a bunch
the country.
of them now.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Cool. When did that start?
So let's see, 25. That was about 30 years ago.
Oh, wow. So the resource has been going on for a while.
A long time.
Okay, cool. So do you partner with any other local nonprofits or anything like that?
Absolutely. So we're always looking for opportunities. There's an Austin Housing Coalition and an Austin Home Repair Coalition. The Housing Coalition gets together, especially around advocacy, to support each other in policies that create more affordable housing and better, better decisions, and try to support better decision making around issues that can impact the cost of housing, and in everything from housing to support the homeless community, to housing, rental housing, to affordable home ownership, which is where we typically play. We also, the Home Repair Coalition, I love the fact that in the Austin area, everyone that gets together and does affordable home repair actually partners together, meets monthly. They have one single application, so it doesn't matter where you go. You fill out one application. It gets vetted. Sometimes 2 agencies will partner together to get something done, so they're able to pool their resources. So it's a very collaborative group that really, I think, makes our dollar stretch further in the Austin area around that kind of work. And we just stand ready to help. And when we get a call from a friend that's either running another thrift store and needs help, or running another nonprofit, if we're able to do something to support them, I like to preach to my team that we don't need to worry about somebody taking a piece of our pie. We're just going to bake another pie. So there's plenty to go around.
So you said you're beyond the days where you're going to be able to cover, $100,000 isn't going to be the land. It's not going to be the land and the building and everything else.
That's
so
right.
These people that buy these houses, and you said that sometimes Austin or Habitat for Humanity in general operates as a lender, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you'll basically subsidize the cost of the home, then give them a loan for whatever's remaining on the home, and that allows them to have an affordable house, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's how the whole process works. Okay.
At a very simple level, we will also use third-party lenders. Basically, what we do is we establish the affordable home price based on the income level and what they can afford to pay in a monthly mortgage, and factoring in all the other costs around it. And whether we're the one holding it or someone else is, there's still a dollar limit to what they can afford. And so that's really how we look at it. So these days, with COVID especially, we've been using a lot more third-party financing, because that's just a smarter thing to do when you're trying to pinch pennies and make sure that you get through an economic crisis. But whether it be our mortgage or somebody else, it's a partner that's vetted, and it's a process that's creates an affordable home for a homeowner. The other thing that we've done that I think is really critical is we've got a policy around deed restrictions. So the homes are deed restricted, which means they remain affordable. Someone's not going to buy a home that's deeply subsidized, then be able to turn around and flip that home in a few years and make money on it.
That would be just totally
win the Habitat lottery. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be able to buy the home and then rent it to someone else. Anybody buying the home has to qualify. They have to need a home, and they have to make under a certain income level. Those income levels have risen over time because the high level, not necessarily the low level, but the upper limit is up to 80% of median family income. So someone making $65,000, $75,000 a year may actually qualify, depending on how many dependents they have in their household, for a Habitat home. And probably that's the only way they could qualify for home ownership in this community, unless they just had a large sum of cash sitting in the bank.
Yeah. So on that note, what are some of the specific challenges you're seeing in Austin? I know one of them must be the rising price of land and it continuously being more difficult to subsidize homes here.
Yeah, that's true. Finding land that we can afford. Our preference for years was build ready lots that were ready to be built. Now we're finding that it's not unusual for us to get a piece of land and then have to develop it. Well, so then you have to find the money to actually put in the roads and the streets and
to
the
make another company.
That's right. So that's a whole different thing, and that's expensive. We're trying to move into inner city land and build more housing on less land. So going up, that has its own construction challenges. It has its own. It has challenges because you're trying to fit into a neighborhood, and I think that it's kind of funny in Austin. There's a lot of people that say they're for affordable home ownership, and they're for affordable housing. But truth is, they're for it as long as it's not next door to them. And so we find that bringing the community together to build homes is one of the best ways to address this, because when people come together and work alongside homeowners and build these homes and do something for the community, they get to understand who the homeowners are that need this help and that they're helping. And that just really breaks down a lot of that misunderstanding. And, they realize that this hardworking young lady is a teacher in the local school, or this mother that has 2 children and is working at Dell Medical Center is, this is a lifeline for her. She's not going to be moving from one apartment to the other with constantly rising rents. Her children are going to be able to put down roots, and it has impact not just on the family today, but into the future, because now they've got stability. Now they've got a place that's their own. They're not going to have to worry about moving. They can really dig in and start supporting the community and really just living life the way it was intended to be. And we're just so proud of how hard our homeowners work to get into these homes.
Hello, dear listener. Sorry, I just want to cut in this episode for 1 second. This is Justin, your host from Friends in Austin, one of your hosts. And I just wanted to let any new listeners to the podcast know what the podcast is all about. The podcast is about bringing you the stories of the people that live in Austin, whether they be business leaders, musicians, entrepreneurs, artists. So if you live in Austin and you want to hear some inspiring stories, or maybe discover some new opportunities or places you could work or things you could do, then I think this is a great podcast for you. So if that's something that you think you would like, please check us out and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast player. We're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, any major podcast platform. You can find us and subscribe. So thanks again for listening. Now let's get back to this amazing episode with Phyllis. You mentioned earlier that you went overseas and did some international work. Mm-hmm. Does Habitat for Humanity in general try to make a point out of getting all their affiliates to maybe move around to different areas and see how different affiliates are doing things?
So, yes and yes. I've really been blessed to have been accepted onto the Habitat for Humanity U.S. board. So it's the U.S. Council. Started that last year and last summer. And so it's really a great opportunity to get to work with affiliates across the country and look at how we can support each other and impact each other. Habitat International highly encourages affiliates to participate in international builds. It's not a requirement. They do require Habitat affiliates to tithe to Habitat International, and so we send a portion of our income here to support builds around the world. And so not only do the dollars that support Austin Habitat help build homes in Austin, but a portion goes to international affiliates, and we get to choose locally where that money goes. And it helps build homes with affiliates around the world where they're not going to be able to bring the resources together necessarily. And an affordable home, such as the ones we were building in Vietnam, in a little village that I was blessed to get to be a part of serving, those homes probably cost about $4,500 each. So we're not talking, a $200,000 investment, but this is huge for a family who may have a home made out of wood. Vietnam, for instance, is a long country. It gets monsoons and rainstorms, and so these homes, they'll break down. The family will get stabilized financially, then the home will break down, and then they'll have to start all over again. So getting a home that's basically concrete, that's going to be able to withstand the storms and provide them safe shelter, allows them just that footing to be able to start building and not have to continuously rebuild and rebuild and rebuild. And so in every community, they partner with the community based on what the community wants, not what someone flies in and decides this is what we're going to do, but it's locally driven. And the local habitat will work with the local government and the local communities to determine what the needs are. And so when you're coming there, they're not only welcoming you, but you're actually helping solve a problem that they had. And so it was just a wonderful experience to get to meet families around the world that are benefiting and work alongside those families, and also just get to meet people around the world that care a lot about the mission.
Great. Well, I think that's a good transition into kind of, I want to dig more into what your daily life is like, and you're a female CEO, and talk about that a little bit. So we booked this a couple months ago. You're clearly very busy, and I very much appreciate you coming in. So I'm curious, as a CEO of a nonprofit like this, can you kind of walk us through what a typical day like is for you? What are your biggest challenges? What keeps you the busiest? What's the most exciting?
I don't know if there is a typical day. So that's probably, I think a lot of CEOs would agree with that. I have an amazing senior leadership team. I've got a leadership team member in charge of every one of our departments. So our fundraising department, our financial department, our construction and home repair department, we've got a programs officer that's over our advocacy and our housing counseling and our mortgage services. We've got a wholly owned subsidiary that partners with builders and developers, and they manage that as well. I've got a vice president of retail that's over our retail. I've got someone whose primary job is land and real estate development, to help acquire the land and go through all the entitlements and the processes and the funding that we need to make that happen. So just a whole lot of different businesses. And so I get to rely on them. And my job is to help us all work together well, and be helping them to see where we're headed, and making sure that we're getting where we need to go. I also am blessed with a board of directors, about 30 business leaders in the community. So while my team has one boss, I have 30, and but they're fantastic, super respected, intelligent leaders in the community that not only provide resources to us, but just that savvy leadership, critical eye. They provide fiduciary oversight for the organization. So one of my primary jobs is to support them well, provide them the information they need so that they can make sure we're making sound decisions. Beyond that, with 75 employees, and we're going to continue to grow as we continue to open up additional restores, but that's a lot of people to care for. And so it's really important to me that we have the right culture and that we have a place where people are accepted. This is a very diverse group of people. We've got everybody from people in a loading dock and cashiers in our stores and our drivers to people running our eBay, to people leading construction sites, to people doing housing counseling online. It's just this vast group of people, but they all care about our mission. And it's my job to make sure they're well taken care of, that we pay them well, that we support them well, and that they do the best they can to help us achieve our mission.
That reminds me, I wanted to ask you, I'm sure you've worked at not a nonprofit, a for-profit before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very curious to talk to someone at a nonprofit of this size. I would imagine people would have a different spirit about them. And I would hope so, at least.
Yeah.
Is that true? Like when you're seeing people that are working for this company, would you say that generally people are happier than they would be maybe working for just some other for-profit company?
There are some wonderful for-profit companies out there whose leadership embodies a lot of the things that we embody. And when I see those being really successful, I see companies who give back to their community, and they encourage that with their employees. And so some of our partners that support us, that bring teams out to build and that do lots of good work out in the community. So they're not just making money for themselves, but really also supporting the community in which they live. I think those can be really rewarding. But absolutely, the caliber of people that we get, people come to a nonprofit not because they're going to make more money. They come because they're going to make a difference. And so you've got folks that just love what it is we do, love the people that we serve, love each other, and want to make a difference in the world and leave a lasting impact. And that, when my husband came to our first Christmas party, he walked away and he said, "I felt like we went to a church meeting." And it, wasn't that we were necessarily preaching to each other, but just how everybody was there in the spirit, and just the camaraderie. Our favorite thing of the year is Thanksgiving, because we'll do a huge potluck and everybody brings in their favorite dishes, and we just all mix and mingle and share. And we didn't get to do it the normal way we do it this year, and it was kind of made us all sad. But what I did was they allowed each of the teams to do something together where they could do it socially distanced, and then we got together for kind of a prayer service and a Thanksgiving time where we could come online together and share what we were thankful for. And that was a super special time that we celebrated together virtually this year.
That's great. That sounds awesome. So one thing, I was avoiding COVID a little bit just because it's so often talked about, and we'll just skim through this one quick question. Sure. I imagine, everything's almost the same. It's just, just like any other company, you're just putting policies in to keep people safer at the stores, on the construction sites. Maybe you have some less people. It's been challenging. Okay. Yeah. You want to talk about some of the challenges?
Absolutely. And when it first hit, we were like, what are we going to do? Because the rules weren't clear at first. And it wasn't just for us. It was for everybody. Like, what do you do on a construction site? What do you do in a retail setting? What is safe and what isn't? So we spent more time meeting. We've had COVID meetings. We had, I was fortunate that my chairman of the board is the CEO of Tokyo Electron. I mean, I've got some really smart people on my board of directors, so I was able to also lean into them and see what their companies were doing, which were much bigger than mine. But just trying to navigate all that, Habitat International, because they have so many different affiliates and so many different communities, they were really recommending that we shut down the stores and shut down construction. We were assessing where we were at and really didn't think that was a good move. And so we had to really navigate that. Like, we don't normally go against our recommendations from international, but we're like, can we be safe? And so we got together with other habitats that were deciding to remain open and had to figure out how we could get plexiglass and cleaning solutions. And what do we need to do to keep the store safe, and putting, stations on the floor so people are 6 feet apart in line, and making sure our team feels safe. We didn't pick donations up for a while. And so that was a lot to navigate. Then the construction side, we are still limited to 10 people per house or per site. And so we have to manage with less volunteers. We normally have 30 per house, which means we can't get as much work done, which is costing us more because we have to use subcontractors. But the city inspectors drive by. If somebody takes their mask off for a minute and the inspector happens to be driving by, that's $1,000 fine. So you're trying to keep up people's morale and spirits at a time where they've got all of this to worry about. Plus, the staff worried about getting sick. We've been blessed that we have really sailed through this with very little problems. A couple of people that did get ill, it happened outside of the workplace and they didn't cross-contaminate. And I hope that continues. But we've been super blessed. But it's been a tough year. We've had to discontinue some of the houses. We have to put some families off until next year so that because we couldn't get as much done, so that we could just kind of condense what we were getting done, and just had to make adjustments. We've made decisions that would put cash in the bank quicker, using third-party financiers, using banks instead of lending the money ourselves, so we get cash at closing. That puts us in a much better position than waiting 30 years to get paid back when you're in a time that you don't know what donations aren't going to come in and what you're going to be missing. We had a portion of time where our stores weren't making as much money because people weren't shopping as much. But our online store took off and did 3 times better than we thought it would. So
that's good.
We see that it has forced us to do some things better. Our online, we had always talked about doing online housing counseling, and now it's all online and it's working great. And so it has forced us to probably jumpstart some of the stuff we were doing by 5 years. And other things that we're doing right now, we'd love to go back to doing it the way we had before, but we're definitely going to be different coming out of COVID.
Yeah, I imagine it will probably make you stronger.
I think so.
But I bet it has been challenging being so community focused. And like you said, you have the Thanksgiving thing. I think a big part of the company culture is likely community.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure that's been tough. And you mentioned, you had a little bit less, houses this year. I was actually curious about how many houses do you do a year in Austin?
So I'm going to get the number wrong. I think we got 22 done this year. Okay. So that was actually a good year. And the reason it worked out as well as it did, was supposed to be 25, was because we'd already planned on 11 subcontracted houses, and that didn't change. Mm-hmm. So we were able to get 11 townhomes built in the Mueller subdivision. They're just beautiful. Michael Shue's architecture firm designed them, and because they were subcontracted, we've had issues. I mean, just like every other builder, we can't get appliances. We're having to delay some home closings because the appliances that we ordered early are still not in. And so but everyone in construction is having those problems.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're just in a long line of people just trying to navigate this.
Okay. So the question of kind of your day-to-day led us into all this. I wanted to dive further into maybe any challenges or anything like that you've experienced as a female CEO. For example, I had a founder of a company on here, Autry Industrial, and they had a female CEO, and they mentioned that they were in a meeting with some investors, and the president of that company, which was some kind of investment company, the female CEO would ask a question, but he would answer it to the male. Have you had anything like that happen to you? Did you set out to be a CEO, or did it just kind of happen?
Interesting. I'm a firm believer that you take on the challenges life presents you, and there's a path. Everyone's got a path. I started out as a CPA in real estate accounting. Really didn't like accounting all that much, but I did it for about 15 years. But it was wonderful training, and I probably wouldn't have gone back and not done it if I could have changed, done something different in my earlier years, because I learned so much through that process. I kind of went into it because that was at a time where jobs weren't as, the job market wasn't as good, and there was a big demand for accounting at that time. So it was super good training. It just really was. But about 15 years in, I had my third child, and I really didn't want to do it anymore. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. I even did a stint of having my own firm for a while. And so I got to experience a lot of that corporate world there. And that was at a time where there was more and more women CPAs, not as many in management, but more and more women CPAs. And I did a stint in public accounting. I was a controller for a small real estate company. And so it was really good experience. Probably there was some discrimination, but there was still a lot of opportunity if you worked really hard and and pushed. There was the doors were starting to open at that time, and so but then trying to decide what I wanted to do next. Like I wasn't satisfied. That was probably the biggest challenge. I went through several years of just really searching. Did a lot of volunteer work during that time. Probably sometimes I felt like I was doing more volunteer work than I was paid work, because I was really just trying to find out where I found my value. And a job came open for a small Chamber of Commerce in Athens, Texas, a beautiful community. And I had done the audit for them. And so I, in my little firm. And so I was like, I can do this. It pays less than half of what I've been making as a CPA. But if I'm going to make a big change and go do something different, this looks interesting. And my kids were small, so they didn't know that I was choosing poverty. So this was a really good time to do it. And so I just went down this path and absolutely fell in love with that world of that, community development and community engagement, and getting to work with the businesses in the community at making that community better and stronger and making them stronger. And I got to do everything from, I served at 5 different chambers of commerce, and I got to do everything from hiring Santa at Christmas in Athens. Always find out if Santa smokes, because it's not good to find that out after the fact. Ran the Christmas parade, rodeos, festivals. Got to Keep Victoria Beautiful started again. Worked on education programs and scholarship programs, and so got to do a lot of work that just felt really good. And I became known as a fixer in that world, because the first chamber I went to, the last president had left, and they were in financial disarray, and they needed help, and I kind of came in and fixed it, got it to where they were making more money, and then another one called and said, "Hey, can you come in?" And that just kept happening, and I just kept moving from one to the other to the other. A lot of times coming to fix a problem or build it up, and so that fixer thing kind of came into play when I came to Habitat. They were kind of at a transition point, and not that they were broken, but really, things are getting more expensive. A lot needs to happen, and they saw that skill set in me. I wasn't looking for Habitat, but I was just open to that next step, and had spent at that point about 20 years doing Chamber of Commerce management. Like, do I want to keep doing this and going to another town and getting to know another 2,000, 3,000 people, or do I want to stay in the community I'm in and really build on the relationships I've already been able to establish and do something that's meaningful in that same community? And so it was like the perfect position for me. I'm so thankful that somebody reached out and suggested that I apply, and kind of the rest is history.
That's awesome. I can see the appeal of kind of wanting to settle into a place, but still continue to do the same type of work.
Yeah, it was, and just too, the thought of going to another community and solving the same problems again, because you started to feel a little bit like rinse and repeat as much as you like it. Like, okay, yeah, we got to fix the membership. We got to fix this. We got to fix that. And getting to actually work on problems that have been in the community a long time and start finding solutions for them. It just was super appealing.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings me to a question around college, actually, which seems odd, but you went to school for, accounting, became an accountant. It sounds like you didn't really like it that much.
Yeah.
On the last episode, I mentioned that I said college is a scam. And my girlfriend said, you shouldn't say that on the podcast. That's offending to people. Some people value their college education. And I get it. It's like, I don't really totally, I'm not saying that it's totally worthless, but I'm curious, what is your opinion? You went to school. Obviously, your education brought some value to you. You learned about it. You have children. You see that college, obviously, the price has gone up.
Yeah.
What kind of advice do you give your children when it comes to college? Are you happy to see them go to college? Do you worry about them not finding something that they care about and just going to get the piece of paper? Do you have any conversations with them?
So we've had lots of conversations. All 3 have graduated. I was a big proponent of education I came from a family that no one had ever gone to college.
Mm.
And I was not encouraged to go to college. I think the best advice my parents gave me was my car broke down a lot, so they thought I should marry a mechanic. So I was, for me to go to college was, it just wasn't expected. And there was a lot I had to overcome to make that happen. So, it is more expensive. I don't think people should go just to go. I think that taking challenging courses and really understanding that first job out of school isn't going to be your dream job. Like life is a journey, and you're building skills. If I hadn't done the things I had done up until now, I wouldn't be as successful in what I'm doing today. All those experiences of running those different chambers and all the different community engagement opportunities I had, and the experience of being in the business world and even being in the real estate world prior to this, really have helped me know my customers, know my sponsors, know the people that support us, understand the issues that we're facing, understand how to advocate for policy, because we did a lot of that in the chamber world. And so all those experiences just help me be better at what I do. I do think that we don't have enough people going into the trades. I think college is too glamorized, and there's a lot of really good opportunity to make an excellent living, make a difference in the world, and do something and be very successful. And it doesn't demand college. There's a lot of people that work for us that didn't go to college. We have some that did. It is good in many ways, because it was good for me, because it not only built up my knowledge base, so it forced me to learn how to learn. And I think if you have a good college education, what you do is you learn how to learn. And and some people already are good at that and don't need college to do that. Because education doesn't end with college. That's just like a step.
Mm-hmm.
But it can get you in the door for places. And so that's a really long answer.
It's a great answer.
Okay.
And that transitions me to the next question.
Okay.
What advice would you give someone in general that wants to be either a female or just in general that's kind of looking to get into business and leadership in business?
I get a lot of young ladies that come speak to me about this, and a lot are looking for a shortcut. They're coming and going, "Oh, you did this. How do I get to be a CEO?" At age 30, I wasn't trying to be a CEO. I was trying to figure out how to survive in accounting and learn what I could learn there. And many times was standing at a photocopier just copying stuff for somebody all night long, because that was my job at the time. It's like doing the best wherever you're at and understanding that life is a journey. I think relationships with other people, not just people you work with, but outside, and doing work in the community, so you're connected out with something beyond just your day-to-day work, I think are critical. If I hadn't done volunteer work, I would have never found the passion that was Chambers of Commerce for 20 years. If I hadn't done volunteer work, I wouldn't have learned how to fundraise, which became really a critical component of running Chambers of Commerce. If I hadn't said yes to opportunity, I wouldn't have left the public accounting to go be the CFO for a small real estate company, which scared the living daylights out of me at the time, because I felt totally incompetent, and for sure somebody was going to figure that out, that I was just an imposter. In fact, I lived with the imposter syndrome for years. They're going to figure out that I'm just this little girl from Victoria, Texas, that doesn't really know what she's doing here, and doesn't know which fork she's supposed to be using in the restaurant, and didn't know where to go in the airport the first time she had a flight out of state. And, so many things I had to figure out the hard way. And I just always felt like I was going to get found out. And I was so thankful for the day that I finally realized, I think I've got this, and I don't need to be proving myself to anybody anymore. So
I think that's a great thing to point out, and a thing that a lot of people experience. We're all kind of feel like we're faking it.
We all do. And to an extent, fake it till you make it's the thing, and it's okay. But we all have intrinsic value, and we need to understand that, and we need to appreciate that in each other. And I think just relationships with other people is so undervalued, and it's the best part of what I do every day. I mean, I love my work because of the people. I love the people I work with. I love the people that support us. I love the people that we serve. And so many people that have helped things happen for me at Habitat, or friends I've made along the way at a lot of different other places. And just, if I was just out there doing my job and trying to get ahead and it was just me, I don't think those things would have happened. But, I brought a friend through when I first got there and said, man, this furniture just kind of sucks. And we need a, we've got this building we just built, but I'd like these conference rooms. I'd really like to have chairs that move around and tables that move around. And the guy owned a furniture company, and I was just showing him our place. I really never thought he was going to do this, but within a week, he replaced all our furniture.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And people come in, they're like, wow, this is so nice. I'm like, we didn't pay for this. And just things like that. It's relationships, and that's what makes the world go round.
I totally understand what you're saying when it comes to relationships in that way, because in a small way I can relate. Like your organization, you work with many people. It's very community focused. But before I was doing this podcast, and I still do some programming, I'm a software engineer, and I work very much just in a silo almost. And I've always worked on small teams too. I've never worked for a big company. So it's very much like you're in your little box and you never leave it. One thing that's really great about doing this podcast is just sitting down and having conversations with people like you. I feel like I'm meeting so many new people. I'm getting to know stuff about Austin. I'm getting to know stuff about how different kinds of businesses work, and just the value of really having contacts and understanding the city you live in better, and what's going on, what the issues are, what are people talking about, and who's here, and all the amazing, great people that are here that I can talk to like you. And this has been an amazing interview. I've really enjoyed all of it. We were coming up on an hour here already. Is there anything
How did that
else?
happen?
Yeah, I know. It went really fast. Phyllis, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Really appreciate you coming in, and I love what you're doing. Also, if someone wants to get involved in Habitat for Humanity Austin, just go to the website. Best place to go?
AustinHabitat.org.
Or go to a Restore and buy something.
We'd love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Thanks.